California, Mr. Costa, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to join in with my colleagues in the introduction of legislation that we will be discussing later this afternoon, the Infrastructure Jobs and Energy Independence Act of 2011. But first of all, I'd like to thank my colleagues who spoke a moment ago, Congressman Tim Murphy and Congressman Tim Walz, both who talked so importantly in the need to get our nation's energy house in order. Since the long gas lines of 1973, policymakers on both sides of the aisle have attempted various efforts to pursue an energy policy that would reduce our dependence on foreign sources of energy. And what has been lacking through all of those efforts since 1973, and that is a long-term plan that has bipartisan buy-in, in which we can stick to it both in the short, near term and longer term to reach those goals. Why hasn't it happened? Because unfortunately, too often here in these chambers, the lost art of the political compromise has gone away. But today, with the introduction of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Jobs and Energy Independence Act of 2011, we have an opportunity to come together as a House, to come together as a nation. This is what the Bipartisan Energy Working Group has done over the last few months to really put together a piece of legislation that reflects past efforts, common sense ideas that would enhance our path toward energy independence and national security through the following means. First, it would increase the production of domestic oil and gas on the outer continental shelf. It would also increase sources of alternative energy, utilizing clean energy technologies whenever possible. In addition to that, it would dedicate a fixed percentage of the royalties that we receive from those oil and gas that is derived from federal lands, both onshore and offshore, the second largest source of revenue to our nation's treasury, to the following purposes. First of all, it would invest in our infrastructure, revitalization and renewal that provides more jobs and that is sorely needed. It would invest in conservation programs. It would invest in environmental restoration projects. It would invest, so importantly, in renewable energy research and development so that once again we can regain the lead around the world. It would invest in clean energy technology as well as increasing development of existing as well as traditional energy sources, like improving our transmission lines. And it would provide energy assistance for those most in need. Sharing a portion of such royalties with producing states also would provide an incentive for those states. Increasing the diversification and efficiency of America's transportation system, among other things. As a nation, we must work together toward realistic energy policy. At the end of the day, we cannot afford to take any energy sources off the table. As many of you know, I am a firm believer in using all of the energy tools in our nation's energy toolbox. And that's what we need to do. Conventional energy, together with renewable resources and a strategy for energy conservation, will best serve our long-term energy needs, the best management practices our nation has to offer. As we create new comprehensive energy policy to reduce our dependencies on foreign sources of energy, reducing our dependence on those nations, it will make a big difference in America. I believe it's important for us to understand and agree that realistic transitional timelines as we embark upon this bipartisan energy policy, both in the near term and the long term. Finally, I look forward to cooperating and collaborating again with the members of the Bipartisan Energy Working Group and members of Congress to address ways in which our nation's energy resources can best be utilized to help us to secure that balanced energy future in the 21st century, which what all Americans want us to do. And I believe this legislation that we will introduce this afternoon will put us along that path for a long-term, secure energy future for America in the 21st century. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Nunley. Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.